From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
And hello again. Welcome to another edition of Chicago Newsroom. I'm Ken Davis. Glad you could join us this week. This is a program where we've decided that we're going to spend the entire half hour today talking about the most important thing that's happened in recent times. It was on Tuesday, the day we will never forget. The Beatles are on iTunes now, but maybe we can find a few other things to talk about. That seemed... When Steve Jobs tells you this is the most important thing that's ever happened, you have to pay attention, right? We are talking today with Lou Ransom. Lou Ransom is the executive editor of the 105-year young Chicago Defender, and we're glad to have you with us today for the first time, Lou. Thank you. Also from WGN 720 WGN, we have the director of news director, Charlie Meyerson, joining us today. Charlie, thanks for coming by. We also have Sarah Karp with us again for the first time. Sarah Karp is deputy editor of Catalyst, the magazine about issues regarding schools and lots of those kinds of issues. So we have so much to talk about on the program today. I can hardly wait to get started. We'll have to put off the Apple discussion about the Beatles for later on. But I think really to me the most important thing that happened this week is the replacement of Ron Huberman. Sarah, you think that was pretty big? Terry Mazany.
Terry Mazany was a very interesting choice. I mean, it's not terribly surprising because people have said for the last couple of weeks, if not months, that he's kind of the mayor's guy, and have sort of speculated that he might want to do it and that he might do it if the mayor said, "Would you please do it?" However, here you have a guy who ran a foundation coming into CPS for 6 months. What's he going to do in this short period of time? You know, he says, all I'm going to do is hold the line, you know, just keep things stable. But at the same time, CPS is facing a $700 million deficit. So it's going to be very hard to just hold things stable and not make any decisions. Or else you're going to have the new mayor come in May and probably install a new CEO and have a whole lot of headache because, you know, the budget has to be passed by August according to state law. So if you come in May and you haven't made any movement on that $700 million deficit, it's going to be hard to figure out what to do in, you know, a month and a half.
But I'm sorry, you go ahead.
My whole take on it, when as soon as it happened, I said, the timing. You know, Huberman said that he was going to be leaving, and so that was, after he made that announcement, it wasn't a surprise. He said, but okay, to say, I'm going to be going by the end of the month, you know, and said, so what expedited things? What was the reason for it? Because it's not like he's going somewhere else. He says he's going home.
Right,
yeah,
you know.
The rumor or the thing that we hear is that Mayor Daley was pissed at him because he said that he was going to leave before the end of May, you know, before May.
Right.
So if that's the case, then just get out.
Yeah, I think Daley. And also, you know, I think Daley picked him because he had a certain job in mind for Huberman, which was to sort of shrink the bureaucracy and also to, you know, trim the budget. But at the same time, the rank and file people at CPS are not happy with him. Word has it that the foundations, like Mr. Mazany, were not really that happy with Huberman. I mean, he was not really willing to play game with them the way that Ernie Duncan had been. So, you know, you wonder if there weren't, you know, Huberman was just feeling more and more isolated perhaps, so he's just like, why am I going to put up with this headache for another 6 months when I know I'm not going to have a job in 6 months? So
I think the mayor finessed this one nicely, actually. It was a surprise to me that he picked someone for an interim period, someone who, by the way, said he'll take the job for just $1. You got to like that. I mean, and someone who said his first priority, his main priority, is going to be to lead the search for the next school's CEO. Setting the table for the next mayor.
But also, the other thing that stirred into this, and I think this is really critical, is the loss of Barbara Eason-Watkins as the director, or whatever she was, the head of education.
Right.
With Huberman, I think we almost exacerbated this notion that the whole thing can be run by a good manager, a good numbers guy, a guy with a laptop can run this thing. And somehow or other we just completely lost the idea that there is this customer base, the students.
Right.
Right. And that we learned, I think, through this process that like children are not widgets, and it's just because you put all these performance management things in that would say all this data that says, okay, you know, the reading scores aren't high enough. Well, the question is, I don't think that we really didn't know that the reading scores weren't high enough. The problem is, how do you get them to be higher?
Right.
And if you don't have a plan to push them higher, then, you know, so what that you know what the problem is.
And if you don't have, if you're not going to rely on an educator to move those metrics, then who are you relying on? You're relying on Huberman. You're relying on a wonk, basically, you know, to make things work. And I said, okay, you make things work, but for the educational process, making them work means student achievement, means higher scores, it means a lower dropout rate, it means all of those things. And none of that moved forward, at least for the last 6 months.
We talked a little bit on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I hate to repeat this, but it's just an interesting observation that I've heard others make, that Huberman was really in his element at the CTA.
Yeah.
because I mean, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. Here's a guy who just lives to like crunch data and make data real in the real world. So he invents Bus Tracker, he gets all this kind of stuff going, he gets the trains and the buses running on time. And then suddenly, maybe not even his idea, he's told, go run the schools, and he comes in with this kind of this mindset as a data-driven kind of guy. It may have just been a bad fit all the way around.
And it became very punitive in the school district. I mean, there's a lot of teachers that have been fired or put on corrective action, a lot of principals that have been fired, you know, fast-tracked to being fired. And it's, you know, is it really a system that you really want all, you know, people to be freaked out every 10 seconds and feel like the bludgeon is about to drop? I mean, there's a different sensibility, I think, that you need in schools.
Well, given that Daley needed a replacement for Huberman, what do you all think about the decision to go with an interim as opposed to picking a long-term, permanent new CEO?
I don't think there was any chance of him picking a long-term person. I don't think that. And I've talked with the mayor, and even he said that no, he wouldn't settle a new mayor with that kind of thing. He wanted to stress education. He called himself the education mayor, you know, but he recognized that that's not a decision that he could make, you know, for long term. But for 6 months, if it was going to be 6 months, then that's fine. When it became apparent that he wasn't going to allow Huberman to stay there for 6 months, then picking Mazany is actually a pretty good choice. Is
Mazany a good choice with his foundation background, his work before this to improve the schools?
Yeah, I've heard really good things about him. You know, people seem to think that he has a good grasp on education. You know, he was a school district superintendent in Michigan and California, so he knows something about schools. And he's managed a foundation, so he has that background too. He's a supporter of charter schools, but he's also done a lot of work on literacy and professional development. I guess in some way I originally thought that Daley would pick somebody like Bob Runcie, who's a chief administrative officer, just because you have somebody who knows the inside workings, and you a caretaker who can just sort of, you know, knows where the pitfalls are, knows where to go. But maybe Runcie didn't want it. Maybe Runcie wants to be the CEO, and maybe Runcie wanted to sort of hold his place, so that, you know, because if he was just a caretaker, it might be hard to transition. So
and people forget that this is 400,000 students and hundreds of schools, and this is a really, really large operation, and even doing it on an interim basis is no wonderful job. That's something that's really going to be hanging around somebody's neck, and I think that doing it for 6 months, using that 6 months to find the right person, you know, and everybody's going to be feeding into this now. It's not just going to be the mayor making the decision, saying, hey, forget what you say. You know, everybody feels emboldened now. I'm amazed at all these aldermen who now find that they actually can speak, you know, and so now they all want to speak about those kinds of things. And if they're stepping in and saying, well, we need an educator, or we need this, so there'll be a good vetting process. There'll be a process to choose somebody.
You know, this is just completely off the wall, but it is really interesting, those of us who've been around for a while, to see the kind of the zeitgeist in the city right now, that something comes up And normally it would be, go ask the mayor and see what the mayor says. And now all of a sudden the mayor is saying, I don't know. What do you think? And so then it's like, what? Because, you know, there was always this joke that the planning department is a bunch of people walk into the mayor's office with an easel and they put it up and the mayor says, no. that's the end of that.
Right,
Too big. Right. Put a spire on it, whatever it is. So, of course, while we're speaking of His Honor, dear leader, I love this picture on the front page of the Sun Times today. Now, of course, he's celebrating that he got a budget through, but, I mean, would it be churlish of us to say that this was an opportunity for Richard M. Daley to walk out with a bold leadership move and to have done some really drastic changes in the budget that we all know need to be done, instead of just doing a kind of a caretaker thing that, I'm sorry, he said he didn't kick the can down the road, but he kicked a very large 90-gallon garbage container down the road, if you ask me.
You know, a cynic would say, why start now?
Yeah.
But, you know, again, I think there's a case to be made, and it may be the mayor will make it, that those big decisions rightfully belong with the next mayor. However troublesome, however burdensome they may be, you could argue that. One could argue that. I'm not arguing it. I'm suggesting that one somewhere could argue that.
Right, and you would think, if you're making that argument, you say, well, okay, the next mayor will have a completely different vision. I'm not sure that the next mayor will have a completely different vision because the next mayor's vision is based upon these last 20-some years, you know, and no, you don't just turn the city, you know, that quickly. So if you're going to make some different things, you're going to tweak them. And all he did was tweak and said, okay, now you do it, you know, and frankly, I wouldn't want him to do big things and then walk away.
He did the right thing?
Oh yeah, I don't want him to do big things and walk away from it and then have the next mayor say to him, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Does anybody even want this?
Well, what I had in mind was maybe making serious cuts.
Yes.
Well, no,
not adding new things.
But, you know, I think this certainly sets the table for us as journalists approaching the mayoral campaign that's unfolding now. All of the issues that Mayor Daley has left on the table need to be presented forthrightly and consistently and persistently to every candidate so that voters know when they go to the polls what they're getting in the next candidate. And then, again, we as a group of journalists and as a citizenry need to hold whomever is elected, accountable for addressing all these issues.
Well, I mean, you know, the operative phrase in the newspapers today is less than 7% of the $1.15 billion that was paid up front for the parking meters exists. It's gone. It's gone. 70 more years we have on that contract, and it's gone in 3 years. Now, I mean, I know that the mayor and others have said that that makes a lot of sense because we didn't have to do draconian cuts and raise taxes and everything else. But as, wasn't it Joe Moore, I think, yesterday said, it's just about over, folks. There's just not a hell of a lot more that we can sell here. So
Right. And then he laughed about the 911. Said, "Well, we're not going to sell that. Who came up with that?" Well, somebody from your administration actually floated that. So I mean, so those things are out there. And you say, but
how does someone monetize the 911 system? You get an ad when you call 911? I don't know. How does someone make a profit?
If you're calling to report an emergency, please listen to this message from Target. I mean, I know we kid the mayor, but you know, I mean it gets more and more difficult to privatize and to, as you say, monetize these things as you get more into really core services. And I don't know. I just feel a little awkward about having some, you know, multinational corporation answering my 911 call. I want that to be somebody who works at the fire department, you know.
You did see RoboCop, didn't you?
Yes,
yeah. Well, Lou, this is last week's Defender, of course, but I think this is still, it's just as apropos today as it was a week ago. Danny Davis is the consensus candidate, but consensus means what anymore?
Well, it's consensus based upon the group of individuals who got together who said that their express goal was to come up with a consensus candidate. They say they did, but they didn't. They put all these people into this hopper, and they asked all the questions and those kinds of things. But when it became apparent that some of those people that they brought in didn't want consensus, then there was no consensus.
Yeah.
You know, and it became apparent actually fairly quickly. There were people who were saying that, yeah, even if you choose somebody else, I probably will still run. I said, well, then there's no consensus. And once we started hearing that, it's, well, then why are you still doing this? And we asked Alderman Walter Burnett, who was who convened this consensus committee, coalition committee. When we asked him, he said, well, once we realized that those people weren't going to be a part of the consensus, we went a different direction. We chose somebody else. I said, that still doesn't make the consensus. I mean, these were people you called in, they went through the entire process, and your process fell apart. You know, and so that's where we are now. And so there will be at least 3 black candidates. William Doc Wallace had already announced, and there's a couple other people out there. There was a commercial that was on television like the day after the November 2nd election. There was a woman who was running, and I can't recall her name because it just popped in there and said, I'm going to be the next mayor. I'm going, who is she?
And this, folks, is the executive editor of the Defender.
I said,
who doesn't know.
She
He doesn't know who you are.
She just popped up, and I said, who gave her money to do an ad?
Yeah.
But there's going to be that many people involved. There will be some winnowing of some of the people. There's only so much money to go around. There's only so many votes to spread, and some people will fall by the wayside.
But you guys chose to use the word "we lose," meaning African American Chicago loses.
Well, it's actually a paraphrase from the quote from Burnett, you know, who said that, you know, if all 3 run, you know, and he named all 3 of them, then we lose. And it was the same concern that came from the election of Cook County Board President. Said, well, you had all these, it seemed like everybody was running for board president for a minute there, and, you know, Danny Davis ran for board president, you know, and everybody jumped in the race and said, well, yeah, they recognized that Todd Sturgeon was a weak candidate, so here's an opportunity to step in there. And I said, but, you know, when you looked at all the votes that came in, I said, well, I can't remember who the white candidate was that finished second. You know, but it wasn't a black candidate finished second, you know, because they were splitting votes. And so the idea was that if you want to actually present a consensus black candidate, you can't have 3 of them.
Is this true? Is this truer, the statement that, you know, if all 3 run, we lose? Is that truer for African Americans than it is for non-African Americans or those other candidates who are not black in the race?
Well, you know, I look at the Hispanic population of Chicago, and if there is one candidate that the Hispanic population really wants to be mayor, and they wanted to like really push that, but nobody has coalesced around any one candidate. You know, just like nobody's coalesced.
There's not a lot of coalescing going.
No,
on.
not at the moment. And if you look at Rahm Emanuel and you look at Jerry Chico, and
there it is, the first mention of Rahm Emanuel. I was waiting.
Well, you know, but
20 minutes into the show.
But if you look at those guys, you know, and say, well, there's no consensus there either, you know, and everybody has pulled aside their own little niche and said, this is going to be our candidate, or this candidate is more like what I want. I really don't know what this candidate is going to do yet because I haven't really heard him, you know. But at this point, if you're looking at it from an ethnic background, and that's what we do, then you look at the city breaking down that way and said, there may be enough white votes to beat anybody, you know. But if all of the black votes come together behind one candidate, that candidate is a very, very strong candidate in the city.
Has a shot.
And what about the underlying concept that African Americans, blacks in Chicago, do lose if there is no black mayor, or that Hispanics lose if there's no Hispanic mayor, or that whites lose if there's no white mayor? Is that universally bought into by people of any race?
I don't think that if there is no black mayor, that the African American community loses. Period. Because for the last 22 years there hasn't been a black mayor, and for those who have been able to be a part of the Daily Coalition, there has been progress. I'm always amazed. I was at a function and the mayor came in and little kids were screaming. You know, he was at a school and the kids, oh, the mayor, and I'm going, this is the only mayor they've ever known.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then there's college students.
Those kids could have been 20.
These African-American kids retired?
Yes, you know, and that's the only mayor they've ever known. You know, so for some parts of the city, for some parts of the black community, they've done well with Mayor Daley.
You know what I thought was really interesting was when Meeks announced and Andy McKenna was there, you know, the Republican committee.
Suburban
Republican. I thought that was very interesting, and I thought it was a little savvy on his part because, you know, he's a social conservative, and he's probably, if he is, one place he's going to really have trouble is with the gay community. I don't think they're behind him very much. To say the least, but he's you know, saying, okay, well, I'm gonna be a social conservative and I'm gonna try and get those votes. Now I don't know how many of those votes will be open, but maybe some Catholics in this city.
Absolutely.
You know, there's
Ricky Hendon said he was the Sarah Palin of the, but it could very well be that Meeks will go after those votes because there are a lot of those people in Chicago who are social conservatives, who are Republicans. They're kind of an endangered species, and they could see this guy and say, hey, this is what we want. But here's the question that I've wanted to put around the table ever since we knew we had you all coming in.
Uh-oh.
Someone give me a scenario in which Rahm Emanuel does not win the election. Is there a scenario?
If he has to prove that he lives here.
Okay.
You know, if he can't prove that he lives here.
That whole residency thing. But if he gets past that, and he's got plenty of lawyers.
And he's got plenty of money.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. I'm not so sold that Rahm is the heir apparent because of the. For one thing, I was out at my polling place, and I was at a few other polling places, you know, a few weeks ago, and they had their petition drive, and I saw a lot of people walking by, the young people who were out there trying to collect petitions. I think that people, you know, if to the extent that Karen Mosley Brown says, oh, well, he's, you know, Obama's person, and Obama, you know, hasn't done so great. There are some people who think that, who are a little disenchanted with Obama. I don't think that that's like a clear bonus necessarily on his part. And, you know, a lot of people don't even know who he is. They're like, Rahm who? I mean, we know who he is because we're entrenched in it, but there's a lot of people outside of our little, like, news junkie people that don't know. I'm
going to draw on my experience in the internet and reveal, or maybe not a revelation, that Emanuel's name draws lots of traffic, more so if it appears in a headline on the front page of a major news site than I think any of the other candidates in the race at this point. That's not necessarily a good thing. That often is symptomatic of a person or a thing who has heavy pluses and minuses.
Right.
So, you know, I don't think this race is decided, and I hope for the voters' sake that they get the final say.
It's not an anti-Rahm Emanuel statement to say this, but I really hope that's true. I mean, I hope there are a few scenarios left out there where someone can emerge and really offer a different voice.
It's best for us, for the news media, and for the voters, if there's some choices.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, some serious choices, and hopefully somebody will force Rahm Emanuel to state exactly what he's about. Force Danny Davis, force Karen Mosley, everybody that's in the race. Okay, say what you're about. Don't just say that you're not them, or say that you're, well, you know, I'm from Chicago.
Really,
well, you know, you have to be.
I think it's best for all concerned if we go about covering this race as if there is no presumed winner. I think it's best for democracy, it's best for journalism, it's best for the voters.
I hope all you young journalists out there are watching what Charlie Meyerson just said, because that's a really important point.
One thing I wanted to say is that the Chicago Teachers Union is not supportive of Emanuel, and to the extent that they can get, and they're very, you know, got a lot of tentacles in the grassroots, you know, a lot of organizations are on board with them. They are, you know, I heard somebody on the inside of the Chicago Teachers Union, their motto is anybody but.
Anybody but. You know, we have like a minute or two left in the show, and I really wanted to make sure that we reserved at least a little bit of time, Sarah, to talk about your and WBEZ's story this week about charter schools. This is a fascinating thing. The charter schools, your research is showing that a lot of kids are leaving charter schools and they're getting, what would you say, dumped, sent into the regular schools. This is a very important education story.
It is, because basically charter schools are allowed to draw up their own discipline codes, and they are on average much stricter than Chicago Public Schools' discipline code. And so what happens is that kids either leave because they have, for example, one of the big charter school networks charges when you get a certain number of detentions. And they also charge like 3 times as much to do credit recovery if you fail a class. So monetarily, a lot of people don't have money, and a lot of parents kind of feel like, you know, you messed up, I'm not paying for that, go to your public school, you know. And then there's also a lot of policies where, you know, you have to sign agreements, you know, commitments to not, you know, to do this, and commitments, you know, pledges of excellence. And then if you violate that pledge, they say to you, you know what, there's a great public school across the way. I suggest.
Or a not so great school.
Right.
Just what you want.
And the other thing that was interesting to me is that charter schools actually expel 5 times the number of students that CPS schools expel, but because their offenses don't rise to the level of CPS's code, they go back to their neighborhood schools.
So they're still good enough to be in a regular school, even though they're not good enough to be. And, and this is a very complex story, and I know there's been a lot of arguing and debating about it. I just recommend go to Catalyst Online or go to WBEZ. Linda Lutton did a lot of reporting. It's just a fascinating story, and I really hope that you'll take a look at it. I want to thank everybody who's been here on the show here today. It's just an incredible conversation going on, and we could do another half hour with no trouble at all.
I'm good for that.
Okay, let's just keep going. Lou Ransom has been here with us today, executive editor of the Chicago Defender, and I hope you'll come back again. Lou, thank you very much for your 105 years of service.
No, please don't say I'm 105.
You'll look a day over 30.
Charlie Meyerson from 720 WGN.
Thank you, sir.
Identifier.
Thank you.
WGN Radio, news editor. And Sarah Karp is deputy editor of Catalyst magazine. And thank you all for being here. And thank you for watching us here. And if you happen to be, if it's like 6:30 on Thanksgiving Day and you're gathering the family around to watch and you're saying, oh, it's a rerun, this show was on last week, the reason we're doing that is we're giving everybody a day off because it is Thanksgiving, so we're running the show twice. And it's a good chance to thank Greg and Carrie and Rob and Ken and Marcos and Louis and Jason and Chris for helping us get the show on the air. You can find us here on cable anytime, or you can get us on iTunes and Blip TV. You know all that stuff. Watch us. Glad you're joining us. Thanks very much. Happy Thanksgiving. See you next week on Chicago Newsroom.